Hi, this is the second part of the second set of readings for the food travel class. Um, I'm going to be talking about the piece by Hardin, written in 1968 by Elinor Ostrom and Ostrom and Vollan. Uh, Hardin put forth this piece that was published in Science. It was a really big deal at the time, and the theme has carried over really since it was published. You hear people quote it the tragedy of the commons is a commonly applied phrase to um, all kind of natural resource related um, problems. So just briefly going through some of his points, his piece is called "The Tragedy of the Commons," and he uh, puts forth that there's some problems that have no technical solution. And a technical solution is a solution that involves changing the techniques of the natural sciences, which demand little or nothing in the way of change in human values or ideas of morality. Um, One of the characteristics of modernism is an emphasis on technical solutions, and technical solutions equal progress. So in this class of human problems that have no technical solution, he includes the population problem. Um, Citing Adam Smith, he says that there's an assumption that the decisions reached individually will be the best decisions for an entire society. He goes on through his article to critique that idea that individual decisions are ultimately the best for a whole society. And he uses the word tragedy in the kind of in the dramatic sense, where the he quotes a philosopher named Whitehead who says that the essence of dramatic tragedy is not unhappiness. It resides in the solemnity of the remorseless working of things, the inevitableness of destiny. Essentially, the destiny, the inevitable reality that's reached when resources are held in common. He gives the illustration of a pasture, and so you ask us to imagine a pasture, um, and then once society has kind of reached a stable state, each herdsman asks himself, what is the utility to me, of adding one more animal to my herd? And the reality is that the herdsman himself, the individual, receives all the positive utility of adding one more animal, but only a fraction of the negative utility, the impacts of the overgrazing. So this is a quote from Hardin's piece. Each man is locked into a system that compels him to increase his herd without limit in a world that is limited. Ruin is the destination towards which all men rush, each pursuing his own best interest in a society that believes in the freedom of the commons. Freedom in a commons brings ruin to all. So he provides a couple examples of present-day tragedies of the commons, many that relate to natural resources, and talks about private property. And one of his main assertions is that you cannot legislate temperance. It's very difficult to it's easy to legislate abstinence, but it's much more it's much more difficult to enforce abstinence. But legislating temperance is impossible. But temperance or uh, balanced use is what is required. And he explains how this kind of the appeals to um, to conscience really put the people that are being appealed to in a double bind, and the intended communication that the person giving the communication wants the receiver to hear is, if you don't do as we ask, we will openly condemn you for not acting like a responsible citizen. But the unintended communication that they receive too is that if you do behave as we ask, we will secretly condemn you for a simpleton who can be shamed into standing aside while the rest of us exploit the commons. So then everybody's kind of caught in this double bind, being condemned on one end um, for not being responsible, but also being gullible enough to go along with it. What really comes across in this is kind of the father knows best, patriarchy, paternalistic uh, approach where somebody knows what's best for everybody, and they're trying to get and that is a really common position for people who are interested in sustainability to fall into. Kind of the you should. This is what we'd all be better off if we all did, whatever. And I really want us to kind of critique that and to try to figure out if there's a better way, and I think there is. And mostly because most of what people mostly know what to do, know what they should eat or what they shouldn't eat or whatever, but it doesn't stop them most of the time. And appeals to conscience are usually guilt-inducing, and while guilt can be an okay short-term motivator, it is rarely an effective long-term motivator. And that comes out in this piece by Hardin. I'm again quoting, Paul Goodman speaks from the modern point of view when he says, no good has ever come from feeling guilty, neither intelligence, policy, nor compassion. The guilty do not pay attention to the object, but only to themselves, and not even to their own interests, which might make sense, but to their anxieties. What came to mind with that is I've recently read I think a Slate piece. It's not like super scientific or anything, but there is kind of an emerging eating disorder that's related to clean eating. Clean eating being a system of eating that whole foods, organic, pesticide, chemical free, etc. And obviously that's not healthy, right? Having an eating disorder that emphasizes healthy foods is not healthy, and that's kind of going to that point of feeling guilty, and the focus is not on themselves and certainly not on what they're doing for or how personal impacts the personal is political, etc. But the focus really becomes the anxiety production, and that's not the vision of sustainability. So Hardin's solution to the tragedy of the commons is mutual coercion, mutually agreed upon. He gives the example of taxes, where we all gripe about taxes, but we know that it's a social arrangement that is necessary. And that he explains at the end that freedom is the recognition of necessity. So this was a hugely influential piece. I don't at all want to give the impression that it's all proven, that it's in fact there are a lot of we'll get, as we get into the next pieces, the examples are not proven, but many people that you come in contact with will either implicitly or explicitly believe in the tragedy of the commons, and they may have not read it themselves, but the ideas have become so prevalent and so far-reaching that it's almost taken as a fact. And the sociological term for that is reification, where a social creation or an idea becomes so powerful that it takes on a life of its own and is seen as untouchable or unquestionable. And the pieces we'll get into here in a minute will start to really question that. All right, so stopping there, picking up with Elinor Ostrom's pieces in the next section.